is the purpose of literature? Why should it be written? What's its use for us today? From one of my favorite novels, this is what the author writes in the introduction. Certain writers, of whom I am one, do not live, think, or write on the range of the moment. Novels, in the proper sense of the word, are not written to vanish in a month or a year. That most of them do today, that they are written and published as if they were magazines, to fade as rapidly, is one of the sorriest aspects of today's literature, and one of the clearest indictments of its dominant aesthetic philosophy. Concrete bound, journalistic, naturalism. What should literature be for? The term naturalism that she mentions there is a style of novels that are meant to be written as if they were happening in front of you. So if you were to write a novel about your day and everything you do in that day, that will be a style in naturalism. It is meant to exhibit exactly how things are in the real world. And so consider this for other artworks. So think of, if you were to make a picture, if you were to be a naturalist artist, you would simply take a photograph. Or if you were a sculptor and you wanted to be a naturalist, you would sculpt a person as exactly as they are, with every defect that you could find on that person. But the contrast, the alternative then to naturalism, is what's called romanticism. And romantic literature sees things as they ought to be, their ideal. So in sculpture, a sculptor would make something like what Michelangelo did. They would make a man that is an ideal, not what you would find in a real man with their scars and imperfections, but they would get rid of those things to present the best man, the perfect man, the ideal. And artists would do the same thing. They would draw something that is something to be inspired by. Not what a sunset might look like normally, but a perfect sunset, something that's just amazing, something you could probably never see in reality. And a novel, in the same sense, does not talk about the everyday, boring characteristics of most people's lives, everyone's life. A novel is supposed to discuss, great events, great characters, a character we're unlikely to meet in the real world, someone that we'd like to, but ultimately we're unlikely to find, because people have flaws. We all have flaws. We're not perfect characters. But why would you want to read about someone that you would meet on the street? That's the argument. Wouldn't you rather read about heroes? Like when you go to the movies and watch Superman, superheroes. Part of that is heroism, for example. Part of that is the ideal. We're seeking the ideal. It's unlikely to find a superhero in real life. But we can identify them in movies that glorify and idealize characteristics that we find in the real world. And all it's doing, this piece of artwork, is it's piecing together things we might find in the real world into one person. So we might know someone who is very honest, or has the right amount of pride, has the right amount of conscientiousness. But they're unlikely to have all of them, maybe one of them. But what if we made a character in literature who had all of them? That's something that would be interesting to read about. And what if we could write a novel to which we had that greatest character against a character who has all the evil qualities, all the worst qualities? And what would they do? How would they fight each other or something? That would be interesting. But the naturalist school doesn't think that's worth doing. They don't want to see the ideal. They would rather you read about and be interested in the everyday life. So biographies are often written as naturalism. They basically have to be naturalism because you want to know what the author, who he is, what he's done, what his real life was. But if you romanticize something, then it takes a process of thought. It's not just recording events that happened. Now you're putting a value judgments on things, and you're trying to make things an ideal, what they could have been. And so let me continue on the same page. So the author says, which talks about Romanticism, the conceptual school of art. It deals not with the random trivia of the day, but with the timeless, fundamental, universal problems and values of human existence. It does not record or photograph. It creates and projects. It is concerned, in the words of Aristotle, not with things as they are, but with things as they might be and ought to be. So that, I think, at least for me, is far more interesting than reading the biography of someone's random everyday events. I think it's also much more difficult to write a novel in which you dramatize, not just dramatize, I guess dramatize might even be a naturalist school. You romanticize the events, and you try to create great struggles. I think it was something that Homer did as well, the epic poets. They tried to create great events and make the Greek gods, for example, were big people. They were just huge walks of life, and they did great things. That's the kind of thing I think people still like, and as long as they do still like them, there is hope for humanity, that we look at art as something to be inspired by. And should we be inspired by the everyday? Should we be inspired by the blanket with stains on it? Because stains happen, so we should be complacent and we should expect blemishes and errors? Or should we instead prefer to be inspired by just amazing pieces of work with no errors whatsoever, with excellence? And the sculptures of Michelangelo is a testament to what man could be. It's not a photograph of a real person. Just like when artists draw, when models come in, naked models often, and artists draw them, they're not meant to draw, the weird places where hair is not supposed to be, or scars and bruises and all these other blemishes. They're supposed to draw the figure, right, the ideal. They don't capture everything that's on there. Some things are not meant to be put in a piece of artwork, at least to the Romantic school. Why put in the scar on a leg? Why is that part of art? I think that's a big contrast between the Romantic school and the Naturalist school. I put that out there as an interesting idea, a contrast of what art ought to be, and the kind of art that one thinks is great. What does that say about the person? And what does that say about a society that seems to demand the kind of modern fiction or modern art that we have today? And those two quotes were from The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.